Welcome everybody. We are here at the beach. We are wet and cold and
Not that
we're,
cold, but
you know,
definitely wet.
it's 45 degrees. I don't know what you're talking about. That's cold in my book.
The layers and hand warmers that are happening right now are like dialed into perfection.
Fantastic.
So, shout out to my parents for providing hand warmers.
Woohoo! Much appreciated. Anyway, we are out tonight because there is a nice low tide at about 10:15. We will definitely not be live that entire time, but we will check in with Stina. Tell us what you're out here. What are you doing right now?
Yeah, so we are working the tide out. We're doing some beach monitoring, which is something we've been doing since summer of 2013. 2021 is the year we start entering data, so that's a lot of data to be going through. But it's really cool information to see how these beaches change over time and between seasons. And what we've done so far today is we've started measuring kind of the slope of the beach, so we can see a steep beach, how the substrate and movement of the rocks and sand and sediment changes to see how the beaches change in that way. We also just finished up measuring a bunch of oysters, which
nice.
is something that we kind of noticed that was different about the beaches. And at the end of this month, the Salish Sea After Dark, which kind of features some of this oyster research, we'll be playing with the West Sound Film Festival.
Yes.
So that's happening at the end of the month. So
another fun thing to tune in for.
Once upon a time. It's still going in festivals.
It's still happening.
And then we also are looking at the number of different species at different tidal heights. So we've looked at the +5 tidal height, which we're standing right next to.
Right there, +5, so that's 5 vertical feet above the average of all the low tides.
Yep, and so we can see the creatures that are in that area and compare it to the little brown fly. To the +1, which is 1 vertical foot above the average tidal height, to 0, which is not
the average.
Just the average, thank you. And then 1 foot below that. So it's kind of cool to see that one, so we can measure or estimate populations based on this information.
Nice. And what have you seen so far at the +5 height?
Yeah, so
tell it to us in real language. If you say scientific names, people are going to zone out and not know.
So, how about we show you?
Yeah, show us some. That's even better.
We've seen a lot of barnacles. Something we've done recently is instead of counting every single individual, that's a lot of barnacles to count. We look at the percent cover, so it's
yes,
like, okay,
much easier. I was very glad to hear about that change because counting barnacles was like my absolute least favorite thing.
It's kind of like, that was the test. It's like, you want to come count barnacles with me? And if people were excited about it, I was like, okay, you're going to be a good fit. It's fine if you're not. We're also seeing some of this high intertidal red seaweed called Masticarpus. I don't know what it's called other than that, so sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. Masticarpus is fine.
It does have a cool form where it's like in this like kind of tar spot phase. So
yeah,
it's like
there's some tar spot
red.
back there.
Yeah, perfect. We've seen limpets.
Lots of limpets. Oh yeah,
little
limpets.
And then up higher, there's these really big limpets.
The dark ones?
This rock here had a fish under it.
Ooh, a fish this high up, huh?
I don't know that.
That we can see it?
Yes,
it's a pretty big one.
But oysters, definitely all over the beach. Here's some of the eggs that we saw when we rocks.
Interesting. Eggs are always fun to see on the beach because, usually the parent is not around, so your guess is as good as anyone's for who laid those.
Well, my favorite, the magic of the flatworm here. It's actually 2 flatworms.
Ooh, and
little
some
amphipods, little beach hoppers, little periwinkle snails. So, some crabs.
I was gonna say I know that there are crabs here, but they scuttle pretty quickly whenever somebody moves along. Yeah. Nice. So that's pretty good diversity of species.
And also some more barnacle-eating sea slugs, which
I
saw one of those. So at the mouth of Big Harbor, there's like every single rock
just
slip
solid.
Covered. So if you want to know what a barnacle-eating sea slug looks like, tune into yesterday's program. They're everywhere.
Love it.
Eggs too.
So awesome. Well, this is some really great species diversity. I'm glad that we're recording it so we know what's here. And now we just kind of wait for the tide to go out. So I'm going to walk down and actually get a little closer to the shore. Before I do that, though, we can salute all of our amazing, very wet, very soggy volunteers. Thanks for being out here and, you know, doing science. Love it. Yeah, I will let you get back to the true science of it, and I'm just going to talk about animals. So, those of you who are watching from the warm comfort of your home, if you want to type into the comments where you're watching, we love to have that information. It's always really fun for us to see just how far our message is going. Our goal with every program that we do is really to inspire stewardship, and you can support us in those efforts by liking and commenting and sharing and those sorts of things. And then if you feel so compelled and you want to help further our abilities to keep providing these programs, you can always make a donation. Harper Wildwatch is a 501c3 organization, so those are tax deductible, and you can do those right on our website. It's really, really easy. But yeah, okay, so here we are right at the water's edge, and it's actually fairly clear tonight, which is good. That means we might see some interesting creatures down here at the shore. But what I'm going to do is walk along and get to a place where we can kind of easily turn some of these rocks and then look at some of the animals that are there. So, again, we're out at Penrose Point State Park, and we have special permission to be out at night. Normally the parks close at dusk, unless you're camping, of course, but we have a nice relationship with the rangers here, so they allow us permission and open up the gates for us, so we're very appreciative of that. We've also got, here's a great find. This is a moon snail mark. You can see that little round hole there. Means that this clam, which I think is an eastern soft shell, shellfish is not my most favorite part of the job. I'm like, it's a clam. But that hole that you see there is drilled by the snail. They have a tongue that can scrape through the shell, and they almost always dig right down here near the hinge where the two shells connect together. And that's because the muscle that holds the clam shut is located right there. And so if the moon snail can dig through the shell and damage the animal's muscle, then it will open and they can eat them. So I'm noticing there's lots of clam shells around that have that distinctive, perfectly round hole, which means there's probably a lot of moon snail activity here. There is other signs that moon snails might be in the area. We might see the actual moon snail shells from maybe dead snails that have washed up on the beach. Those are a really kind of favored shell of hermit crabs that as they get larger, they need bigger and bigger shells to move into, and moon snails have about the largest shell that we have intertidally. Other signs of moon snails will become more and more prevalent as we get closer to springtime. We should start seeing the egg casings of the snails, which look like these very strange kind of plungery shaped things. And then on a really, really low tide, we might see the snails themselves. So I'm going to flip kind of this small rock here. I can see that there's a little bit of space underneath it on all sides, so it's pretty good chances of finding something underneath it. My guess would be lots of crabs and things like that. So let's just give this a little turn. Oh, it's nice and smooth on the underside. That's kind of a rare thing to find in the intertidal zone because everything ends up being covered by barnacles. But what it does show us nicely is these, I always call them barnacle scars. And this is the lower plate of where a barnacle was attached, but is no longer there. So this is a dead barnacle. These are dead barnacles that haven't quite broken off yet. And then the live barnacles, you can see they have these little trap doors on the inside. And if you go to the beach on a quiet day where it's not pouring down rain or very windy, you can hold one of these rocks up or place your ear down low to it and just touch it, just touch the rocks gently, and the barnacles move, and it sounds like Rice Krispies. A little snap, crackle, and pop action there. Got a couple little crabs here in this tide pool. So we're looking at green shore crabs, and I'm going to handle one for you because this is a pretty small species that doesn't usually pinch. I usually say if it's smaller than my thumb, it's probably safe to hold. And you'll notice I'm holding him with my hand flat on the ground. And that's for the crab's protection. They can scurry quite quickly, and their legs are on the side, and so they move sideways very dramatically. And it's really easy for me to, like, if I were to lift him up off the ground, if this crab were to scooch left or right, I would drop him. And though they have a hard protective shell, it's not going to be able to withstand a big drop like that. So this one is a male crab, and I can show. Oops, sorry, I'm trying to do this gently. I can show you that little. I'm gonna move down the beach somewhat and try to get a little bit better reception. Oh my gosh, you guys, can you see? There are raccoons right out there. I see 1, 2, 3 raccoons. You probably can't see it in the light, but their eyes are reflecting. Maybe you can see them out there. Get my other flashlight out and see if I can aim a little bit better. So raccoons are scavengers and foragers, and right now during the low tide is the perfect time for this nocturnal mammal to come out. I'm going to approach a little bit closer. I'm not going to get too close to them, but I want you to be able to see them. There, yep, I see 1, 2, 3. Their eyes reflect in, oh, there's 4. There's another down by the shore. So we've got 4 raccoons here. I think that's all I see here. Being nocturnal, they have this great kind of extra protein in their eyes that reflects light so that they can gather as much and make use of very little like moonlight, which is just so cool. And these guys are out here. They have very dexterous fingers, and so they'll reach down into the rocks to be able to feel around for crabs, and they turn the rocks over quite a bit. You guys, you're supposed to put the rocks back when you're done. Didn't anyone tell you? No, nobody told them. They're supposed to be returning things the way they found them. I guess we'll let the wilderness, let the wild animals do what they wish. But so they're down here. They are very, very good at foraging and finding food. So these guys will eat crabs, shrimp, fish, and they use their dexterous hands to be able to feel different animals underneath there. So they have kind of this reputation for washing their food, but that's not exactly what they're doing. They're mostly heightening their sense of feel. Their sense of touch is greatly enhanced when it's wet. They have those big black, kind of the mask, the bandit mask, right underneath their eyes. And that's thought to be a pretty common adaptation for animals who might be active. Think of it like, you know, like a football player would wear the black, or a baseball player would wear the black under their eyes to help reduce the glare from the sun. So these guys can do that too. And I apologize for the terrible quality of filming. I'm trying not to get too close, aiming my headlamp, holding my umbrella, as well as managing a flashlight too, all while thinking of things to say. So again, I apologize, but how cool is it that we get to see these little predators out here? Now, I'm out here with my umbrella and my waterproof coat, but these animals are able to keep themselves relatively dry as well because they've got these long outer guard hairs and then shorter, fluffier inner hairs, and that helps to kind of protect them. It's very hard to walk on the beach. I've already fallen once. Luckily it was off camera. Okay, come on, focus. We are really testing the limits of my phone camera capabilities here. But yeah, there are four raccoons just sort of foraging here. I'm about 30 feet away. Far enough away that they can hear me, and they're a little curious, but they're not really worried and I'm not threatening them. They're probably glad for a little bit of light from my headlamp. Raccoons are one of the smarter mammals that we have. I'm going to kind of give them a wide berth as we kind of walk around them. They're pretty intelligent, and that causes a bit of a clash when it comes to living with humans and wildlife. When they come together, that could cause problems because these guys are just out here doing their thing, looking for food, trying to make a good home. And then us humans, we get in the way. We leave our trash cans out, or we hang a bird feeder just a little too low, or things like that. And these smart little mammals, they find it and take advantage. And then they're smart. They remember, they learn, they notice. So I've gotten a little bit closer to them now. There are some large rocks here that are most likely harboring fish. And these two right here look pretty determined in trying to capture whatever's under there. They have really good sense of hearing too. Being nocturnal animals, they rely on their sense of hearing pretty well. And so they can probably hear fish moving around as well as feel them and potentially even smell them too. How cool. It's very rare that I get to talk about mammals. All right, I think I'm making them a little nervous, so we'll back off a little bit. Sorry, guys. What somebody's mentioned. Let's see if I can get a little closer view. Love this. Seeing animals do what they do. Raccoons aren't the only animal that'll come down during a low tide. Just everyone else is a little bit more secretive, I guess. But we've seen deer on the beach. There's a population of wolves on Vancouver Island that they call them sea wolves because they forage almost exclusively along the seashore, which is really pretty neat. And look, you can see the evidence of where those raccoons were. They've really disturbed all the sand here in digging, trying to get underneath this large rock. That's a perfect spot for some fish or maybe even crabs to be hiding. All right, I think they've moved off. I don't want to startle them, but I do want to show you folks some cool stuff. Here's a rock that they have flipped and they've missed a creature. This is a black clawed mud crab, and they are kind of famous for doing that just freeze move right there where they just totally pause with their claws out. They have black tipped pincers and kind of a almost pentagon shaped carapace, and I love them because their scientific name is Lopopanopolis bellis, and bellis means beautiful, and they are beautiful. In the summertime, almost all the females that we will find will be gravid, which means they'll be carrying eggs, which is really great, because that's the next generation of crabs. I'm going to scooch around so that I don't step on that creature, keeping my eyes open for more raccoons just in case. Let's see. I'm looking for signs that we're getting into the lower tidal heights. Things like the presence of a little bit of green algae is a good kind of clue that we're getting a little close as the tide is going out. The low tide tonight, it won't happen until about 10:15 or so. I won't go live this whole time. I mean, unless we see something really cool and interesting. Oh, look, here's a half-eaten crab. I wonder who could have done that. I guess those raccoons. Sorry, little red rock crab. Alright. This might be good. Maybe we can just follow raccoon tracks and find interesting things that they have unearthed. Let's save me from trying to balance and flip rocks and not fall. It's really tricky because when I'm doing this in the rain, I can't hear anything. A lot of the times I didn't really realize how much of my navigating a beach and looking for creatures depends on my hearing, because I hear a splash or a little, oh, here we go. We've got a couple of gunnels here. This is an eel-like fish, and these are juveniles. They'll get about as thick as your thumb and maybe up to about a foot long or so. I would guess this is a crescent gunnel, although gunnel identification is a little tricky, especially when they're small like this. But this is a really common fish to find in the intertidal zone because they can breathe through their skin. So they have this added ability, this adaptation, to be able to withstand being uncovered by the tide. So they'll just sort of wait and hang out while the tide is low. And then when the tide returns, they go about their day. And there are two here. The other one's kind of smushing up into the rocks. You can just see their cute little faces. And this is a fish that has no scales. They have soft, slimy bodies. And that's an adaptation for digging in and amongst the sand. They kind of have this mucus coating on them that helps protect them. So we'll put their rock back. They'll probably navigate to another rock until the tide comes up and they can swim. Very cool to see. All right. Well, let's look under a couple more rocks and then maybe we'll wrap it up because it is so cold and wet and man, it's getting hard to walk out here.